Portland Bureau of Transportation wants to make riding your bike all year long a lot easier and more fun. Their program, Ride Through the Seasons, encourages you to try out cycling year-round through a series of group rides and skill-building workshops. In addition to all that, they're also hosting a month-long Rainy Rider photo contest in November with chances to win some awesome prizes. To learn more and get involved, text BIKE to 888-520-0526 or visit portland.gov/ride seasons. That's portland.gov/ride seasons. Hey guys, want to make your home cozier and save a little more money? Take a free online energy assessment from Energy Trust of Oregon. It's fast, easy, and gives you personalized tips to boost your home energy savings, lower bills, and more comfort. Shoot, I'm taking this quiz. Let's take it together at visitenergytrust.org/assessment. We can join thousands of Oregonians already making smarter energy moves. That's energytrust.org/assessment.
Every year around this time, more than 20,000 crows pour into downtown Portland. At night, you can see them filling the trees and rooftops and power lines. And honestly, we don't fully understand it. Why Portland? Where do they come from? Well, today on CityCast Portland, our host Claudia Meza is talking with Gary Granger, one of the city's leading crow experts. He's not an ornithologist, but he's spent nearly a decade walking the streets at night, counting the crows block by block. He's here to share what he's learned, how the city is trying to manage them, and why their nightly arrival is one of Portland's most fascinating winter rituals. It's Thursday, October 23rd. I'm executive producer John Notarianni, and this is what Portland's talking about.
You're pretty much the Portland crow expert. And I know this because when we approached the Bird Alliance about this topic, they were like, oh, yeah, talk to Gary. But looking into this, you're not actually like a bird scientist by profession. You've just been counting crows, like block by block, since 2017. Why do you do that?
You know, it began as just being a bird nerd, my wife and I, and being curious about it, and then being awestruck by the size of the spectacle. You know, the crows coming to Portland each winter is the single largest wildlife event in the city.
Right.
And there are more crows than swifts. I think they're at least as cool as swifts. It's a huge thing. And I know less now about the crows, I think, than I did when I began, despite all the time I've spent. So it's just fascinating endlessly.
I feel like crows are having a cultural phenomenon ever since humans found out that you can make friends. I don't know if you know this, but there are entire social media feeds, just people trying to find ways, like how to get this crow to be my best friend, how to get it to start trading jewelry with me for these peanuts.
Right.
Do you have a crow friend?
You know, I would never call a crow my friend. They really have a different way of engaging the world around us. And yet we exist together. We live together. I have had lots of relationships with crows. I'll call it that. You know, when I was working at Reed, I had crows that I saw almost every day for years. And they knew that I kept cashews in my pocket. And I knew that they'd come by for cashews if they saw me. They'd occasionally touch my head when they flew over, let me know they were there. But I never had anyone bring me gifts.
They don't sound like friends to me, Gary.
We're commensals, right? Hang out together.
Yeah, associates.
Associates, yeah.
Well, let's go back to you counting crows since 2017. How does that process work? Are you individually like 1, 2, 3, or do you have some sort of guesstimate?
Yeah, you know, people who do a lot of birding, like I do, there are techniques for getting a gross number for large aggregates of birds. And what I do is estimating. And so all the counts that I put into eBird and on paper are by tens. So everything's rounded to 10. And, you know, so there are 4 or fewer crows in a tree, it's 0. If there are 5 to 14, there are 10. And it just goes like that. But in reality, there's so many crows that I'll look at a tree on a block. And if there are 100 or more crows in the tree, I find a group of 10 crows in the tree. And then I look to see how many groups there are kind of in a tree. And I'm estimating there might be 70 crows. Or maybe if there are a lot of trees on a block, like 6, and each one has 100 crows, then I'm going to see if they look about the same, I'll count 600 crows for that block. And so
Hmm.
it's not number perfect, but it's close.
Yeah, that's pretty much how reporters count protesters, by the way.
Right.
So why is it so important to keep track of these birds, aside from your own personal fascination? I'm assuming that you're doing this for science.
Yes. So, right, you're right. I'm not a professional ornithologist or scientist. I call myself an
Bird
avocation.
scientist, I believe.
Yeah.
Gary is.
Yeah. Okay. Bird
it's
scientist. I'm an avocational scientist, if you will. I'm a master naturalist. And so there's that curiosity. But, in reality, in the last 50 to 75 years, the large aggregates of crows in the winter have moved into urban areas. And, dozens and dozens of cities across the U.S. have urban crow roosts in the wintertime.
Mhm.
And almost without exception, the first response of these cities has been to try and get the crows to go away. People find it inconvenient when crows poop on things. And so there are all these techniques that have been tried with virtually no success in terms of getting rid of the crows. In some cases, the crows might relocate to another part of the city. But what I would like to see us do as humans is find a way to understand the beings that we have invited to our cities, like the coyotes and the crows, because of how we've developed the landscape. And understand why crows choose areas over others, and see if we can find a way to make areas that would be less inconvenient to humans attractive to the crows, instead of just pushing and shoving them around the city every winter.
Right. And I know from your work, actually, that it was around winter 2012, 2013, as you were saying, that they started coming to Portland all of a sudden. Do
Right.
we know where these crows are coming from?
No, we don't.
We don't. Oh my God. I'm just wondering, what city is where did all our crows go?
It's one of the fabulous mysteries of this. There's been some research with tagged crows and other methods in the last 20 years. There's some research and evidence out there that the crows are coming from places north of us. It could be as far north as Alaska, but certainly up in Canada. And they're coming to climates where it's warmer, but not necessarily, warmth is not the key factor. The key factor is food. Where can they find food all winter long? So there are crows roosting on the East Coast in cities that have frozen rivers, a whole lot colder than Portland. But there's food around. And so these crows are coming from, according to data out there, that could be as far as 1,000 miles away. And that's not unusual for birds to migrate hundreds or even thousands of miles. The one study I know of that I could cite was done that tracked a crow from Davis, California,
Wow.
up to eastern Washington, where it was in presumably a breeding range, and then back down to Davis, I think 2 or 3 years in a row. And that crow flew right past Bothell, Washington, where there's a big roost, and Portland, Oregon, to get to Northern California. And so we don't know their origins. We just know we're really popular.
Right. But I do understand that they've been shifting where they roost in
Yes.
recent years. Do you have any idea why? Because I know that, they used to go downtown, and now there's the Pearl and then the waterfront. What is going on there?
Well, I mean, this is part of what we don't understand that I think we should try to, which is why they choose certain places.
Mhm.
They have no idea. When we first started doing this, a lot of roosting was taking place up near PSU in the South Park blocks. And then it quickly changed, a year or so to more central downtown core, around Pioneer Courthouse Square, then the waterfront, and the last couple of years, extensive roosts in the Pearl. But they will move back and forth from night to night.
Oh.
And I don't know why. Portland Clean and Safe let me know recently that they're continuing the crow, what they call crow abatement program. And so certainly when the falconers are showing up with hawks and chasing the crows out of particular trees, they're going to move somewhere else. They don't do it every night, and they change where they do it. And so this really, are the crows moving because of the hazing by the hawks, or are they moving because they just want to, or because of other factors we don't really understand?
Wow. You brought up the swifts, and it made me curious. We saw a big drop off in the number of the swifts in Portland recently.
Mm-hmm.
Is there any indication that we might see something similar with crows? Have the numbers increased, decreased throughout the years, that kind of thing?
I'll find out in a few weeks when I do a survey. But, what I've seen over the years is a steady increase from, I think it was around 5,000 in 2017-18 to a peak of over 22,000 a couple of years ago. And last year, the surveys I did were around the 20,000 mark. And so
Wow.
I've certainly not seen any decline. But the short answer to numbers is they've grown to over 20,000 each winter, and I've not seen any change in that.
Right. One of the places that the Vox Swifts were congregating this season was Abernethy School. And I think I went a little too late. Didn't see one swift, but I saw the most crows I had ever seen in my life. Like they were going to roost somewhere downtown. And
Right.
to me, that was just as amazing because I didn't know. I'd never been in the pathway. I'm up in St. John, so we have, our neighborhood
Right.
crows, but it's nothing like that murder of just like hundreds and hundreds and like nonstop. Like it was like the naked bike ride. You know what I mean? When you're just like, there's more.
Right.
And it was phenomenal, I got to tell you. But it made me wonder, I was like, do you think they're scaring the Swifts somehow? Like, because they're around the same time. Did anyone ever make that connection?
I've not heard that before. It would surprise me if the swifts and the crows really pay much attention to one another. The bugs that the swifts eat are much too small for the crows to fiddle with, probably. Swifts are not going to be on the crows' menu, so I doubt it. You mentioned, watching the crows just coming. When is it going to end? We're staggered by the number 20,000 in our city, but that's an order of magnitude smaller than historic roosts in rural areas. The crow roosts were in the hundreds of thousands, several hundred thousand in many, many cases documented throughout the history. And so as the crows have moved from rural areas into more urban and suburban areas, it probably is true, I don't have data on this, that the roosts are smaller, but more of them. Because I don't know that Portland could host 250,000 crows.
Yeah. I mean, especially all in the Pearl. I'm assuming that's where they would go, because that would be hilarious.
Yeah.
Well, let's take a quick break here. And when we come back, let's talk about crow behavior. Hey, all you wine drinkers out there, grape harvest is coming. And I know we're spoiled here in the Willamette Valley, but if you're looking to spread your wine tasting wings, I just made that up. Walla Walla Valley in Southeast Washington is home to more than 130 wineries offering great wines and new vineyard experiences. Like I've actually been wanting to check out Abeja, which means bee in Spanish, by the way. Their grounds look beautiful, and 4-time James Beard Award nominee chef Mike Easton heads their kitchen. And there are so many other beautiful grounds to explore that are constantly putting on special events and prefix menus. Plus, Walla Walla has a walkable historic downtown core where you can enjoy more farm fresh fine dining from other celebrated chefs. It's just a scenic 4-hour drive away, and many of these wineries have adorable accommodations on their estates. Head over to wallawalla.org for more info and to plan your visit today. That's wallawalla.org. If you're a home DIYer like me, you might have a few leftover paint cans gathering dust in your basement. Or maybe your house already came with a bunch of them like mine did. So I'm happy to share that Paint Care makes recycling your leftover paint, stain, and varnish simple and easy with convenient drop-off locations as close as your local hardware store. Paint Care has 3 simple rules for painting smarter. 1, buy the right amount of paint for the job. 2, use up leftover paint. And 3, recycle the rest. If you visit paintcare.org/3simplerules, you'll find tips on how to do all 3. Buying the right amount of paint for your project, exploring DIY ideas for how to use up leftover paint, and also just look up the nearest drop-off site in your neighborhood. Paint Care is all about keeping it simple for Oregonians. So, seeing thousands of birds squawking on a winter night can be pretty alarming to some people, especially if they've not seen, like I was saying, when I was sitting in Abernethy School. But I understand crows are actually considered extremely peaceful. What do we know about their behavior and how? Because they're so loud.
It sounds loud and cacophonous to us. In terms of their behavior, the thing that sometimes people focus on is, crows eat songbirds in their nest. And while it is true that a crow will take a bird or a fledgling out of a nest, the most dominant predators in our environment for bird nests are squirrels, followed by chipmunks and raccoons and cats and other things. Crows are way down the list in terms of preying on other birds. They're really just doing the things that you would expect crows to do to want to survive and live a good life.
Yeah. Well, my producer and I were talking about it, and we're just like, maybe they're just like how we assume East Coasters are really mean, but really they're just like, I'm walking over here. Like they're just talking to each other. That's very emphatic. Maybe
Yeah.
that's what it is.
There's some pretty good research out there, mostly with zebra finches, not with crows, that has demonstrated that individual birds within a flock will speak specifically to another individual in the flock with what we might call a name. Some of this was done by a researcher called Dr. Pietro Emilio, who I've worked with before, and really demonstrated that these little birds have specific communications to other specific birds that they respond to in a flock. And
Wow.
so what I imagine now when I look at hundreds of crows communicating is it's like if you were to walk into the rose garden and hear the noise of people talking,
Mm-hmm.
you still hear individual voices. You might not recognize who owns that voice. You might not even understand the words that are being said, but we hear individual voices even in a crowded room. And we could pick out someone saying our name or someone's voice that we recognized. It's the same for the birds. So when
That's
the crows
crazy.
are here in a tree and there are 200 crows in a big tree on the waterfront, and all I hear is noise, I'm certain that the crows are communicating one to the other, or maybe one to a number of crows in ways that they understand really well. So they're having conversations we just don't get.
I want to know so bad. They're talking shit about us.
100%, yeah.
So you brought up the falconers up a little bit ago, and that's actually the way I learned that Portland has such a huge crow population was because I was seeing videos of the downtown falconers. These are these trained hawks and handlers, which the city has been hiring for years now to deter crows from, roosting in certain areas to avoid the massive amounts of poop. Is that having any kind of effect on their population? I know you were like, oh, it might affect where they roost for the night, but is it actually doing anything?
Well, I mean, it is doing something. It's forcing the crows to fly to a different roosting location. Crows don't see at night. They don't fly at night. And so crows can't leave the city at night if they wanted to because it's too dark for them to fly safely.
Oh.
And they know that. So they will fly only as far as they have to after it's dark to get to the next roosting location. Fortunately, the city has a lot of light, so they can fly relatively safely within the city where it's lighted. So it is having that impact. They're moving from one tree to another. To say whether or not they're affecting the overall numbers, well, they started doing the hazing about the time that I started counting, and we've gone from 5,000 to over 20,000. So it doesn't appear that it's having a deterrent effect on using Portland as a roosting location. Whether or not it is actually keeping the crows out of areas that are more or less inconvenient to humans because of the droppings, we really don't know because the city doesn't track it in quite that way. And the hawks are a minor inconvenience to them because they know the hawks, aren't going to eat them.
Yeah. I just kind of love that we have downtown falconers. There's just something about it that it's so old-timey,
It is an old-timey way of thinking about engaging with birds. I don't love it because what we're doing is using force rather than using our supposedly big brains. Bothell, Washington, University of Washington's Bothell campus has a crow roost. And they didn't have one until they restored a wetlands area next to their Bothell campus. When the trees got big enough, crows started to come there in the winter and roost. And now it's a big celebration in Bothell that people come every night during the winter to see the crows come in. They pre-roost all over the campus there. And then before they go to sleep, they fly into the little wetlands and they go to sleep and nobody gets bothered. And Irvine, California has the same phenomenon at a water reclamation plant. We have Ross Island. We have Oaks Bottom. We have Forest Park. But our crows don't go there. And this is truly the thing no one understands. Why are the crows in Bothell flying into little wetlands and the crows in Portland staying right over 5th and Morrison?
They're city crows. Yeah. I mean, it makes sense why our city would want them not near the city because the poop is a problem, Gary. The poop is a problem. I mean, one would say that's not the most hygienic thing to just have a city covered in crow poop in a certain area time and time again. But I am curious if there's a non-forceful way of abating that you've discovered in your research.
I think the answer lies in looking at places where the crows pre-roost on the built infrastructure, like Irvine and Bothell and others, but go into the nearby natural landscape for their ultimate roosting locations. And until we study that meaningfully, I don't think we have any hope of doing other than sort of pushing them around a given area.
Mm-hmm. Was that your dinner gong?
That was the 100-year-old clock that sits on my mantle and
so cool.
Keeps lovely time.
Yeah, our executive producer just wrote in, we need more food carts in the woods. That's probably what will help.
Yeah.
Well, you're planning to get started on your annual crow count in a few weeks. If our listeners wanted to get involved and help out, like what should they know about the process? And is there like a website or is there an email or something if you want that help?
Sure. Yeah, we have a website for years now. It's pdxcrowroost.com. I think the most important thing people could do is just go see the crows and be awestruck. If you want to help with the science, and not necessarily my work, but just science generally, Cornell's eBird app, where birders record their bird sightings, is available to everybody free, and you can go in and record what you see. And I guess if I have a final comment, and Claudia, it's to consider how we talk about the crows, influencing how we think about them. Everyone likes to say a murder of crows. And I think is when we use that sort of terminology with them, it informs our thinking and our feeling about them. We say big flock of crows. And I use the word flock because
You don't use murder.
I don't use murder.
But it's so cool, Gary. I think to me, that's a selling point because I was actually going to ask you, one of my final thoughts is like, would you consider your volunteers an accessory to murder or accomplices? Because I think you'd get more volunteers if they got cool jackets that said accessory to murder and that was just an evil looking crow. But I get what you're saying. You're like, that's not
I think, Claudia, that's a great point. I am not a marketer nor a community organizer. Prince Edward Island has a Return of the Crows march every October. They welcome the crows back with costumes and a parade and music and food. If there are community organizers out there who want to put together a March of the Crows for Portland, I would definitely take part.
I think you need to lean in. I think we have to welcome them with heavy metal and,
Then we get Counting Crows to come out and do a concert.
Oh, obviously. I think we're onto something.
Yeah.
Well, Gary, I appreciate all of the work that you do. I think the
Thank
crows are something that make Portland so special. I feel like a lot of Portlanders have a lot of pride with these crows.
Sure.
So I totally get what you're saying with hey, let's not demonize these awesome, beautiful animals. I agree with you. But I think the demonizing is almost like making them cooler in my head. But I hear what you're saying.
Well, the accessory to murder, Jack, as much as I have railed against the word, I'm going to rethink it now. I'm going to be willing to be convinced and consider
Hey,
that.
for free. Take it for free.
Great.
Thanks again, Gary.
You're welcome.
And now for some events happening this week. Every Thursday on the show, we like to bring you a few recommendations to help you plan your weekend. Here's what we got. Tonight, the Bell Supper Club is taking over Kenton's Victorian Bell Mansion for a haunted disco burlesque dinner. Expect a night of queer burlesque and vintage entertainment, all while enjoying cocktails and dinner in this historic and supposedly haunted mansion. If you're a mushroom enthusiast, the Gifford Pinchot Fungi Festival kicks off on Friday at Longmire Springs Brewing in Packwood, Washington. It's a 3-day celebration of all things mycological, from adventures in the forest to workshops, local art, and food, all inspired by the Pacific Northwest's favorite mushrooms. And this next event comes from Michael, one of our CityCast Portland neighbors. He is also the Winterhawks PA announcer, which is pretty cool. And he wants everyone to know that this Saturday is the Portland Winterhawks home opener. Here's what he wrote. Come cheer on our Hawks as we host the Saskatoon Blades and kick off the celebration of our 50th anniversary season. And if you can't make it, don't worry. On Sunday, we host the Victoria Royals. So there's plenty of hockey to choose this weekend. Thanks so much for the event pick, Michael. You too can become a CityCast Portland neighbor by becoming a member at membership.citycast.fm. You'll be getting early access to all of our picks for the week like this. We're also going to have member-only events, ad-free listening, and the ability to shout out your favorite local businesses or nonprofits on our podcast and newsletter, and seriously, so much more. Head over to membership.citycast.fm to sign up today. Well, that's all for us today here on CityCast Portland. Thank you so much for listening. If you enjoyed the show, why not tell a friend or leave us a rating or a review? And don't forget, you can support this show and get great perks by becoming a CityCast neighbor. Just visit membership.citycast.fm. We'll be back tomorrow morning with more from around the city. Until then, see you at Slim's.